Hello, hi, how are you? Hello, our guest is here, so I'm going to request her to go live. Hey, how all is well? I hope to see you soon once you reopen. Sorry, my shirt's all falling down. Hey, how are you? Oh, you look so nice, Nikki. Hold on, let me turn on the volume up here and let me pin.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I hear you well.
Okay, great. Thanks. You look great. I was looking at
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh. Let me tell you, I feel like I was like Mission Impossible. Like I was working at home and I was like, oh my God, I'm running out of time. Let me fix my eyebrows and pat on this thing on my head.
you. Same. I was like out at the park and I was like, I gotta go. I gotta go. And it's hot out here. So I gotta change my clothes. I can't wear the same thing because it's hot outside. So it was a whole
Yes. I'm trying to pin our comment, my comments here.
no problem. That's always been my struggle. Like I keep trying to pin it and it never wants to be great. So
Okay.
I
I'll
feel
leave it there like that for now. Oh, so nice to see you. You hear me okay? Let me turn.
yes.
Oh, it's so nice to see you, Nikki. You look beautiful as always. But man, I'm telling you, it's like that struggle. It's like, when you're multitasking and doing so much things. Hi, Chef Simpson. You're doing so many different things, and it's like, ah.
It's so real and it's just a lot. I mean, it's different now because yes, we're all at home doing
Yeah,
whatever we have, but at the same time, like we can't just work the whole time because we're home. You still have to have like segments in your day.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
I get thrown off. I mean, I have been, I'm an entrepreneur, so I don't have regular work, I guess you could say, but
Yeah.
like an advertising project and I'm working on a photo that I did. And, I need time for me to like clear my mind,
Yeah.
walk. And it's like, have for me, I will honestly say scheduling or having a schedule has been difficult. Um,
Yeah.
because I'm a night owl. So I stay up late and I'm like, I don't have to get up and go anywhere. Like I can roll out of bed 5 minutes before whatever. Like, shoot, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing.
That's great. I think I was a owl earlier in the quarantine, and then hi, whoever's coming in, hello. I
Okay.
was, and then I was just like, it got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm falling asleep, trying to work, and all of these different things, and I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna play grandma and set a schedule for myself, and be like, okay, by 12 the latest, let me try to go to bed. But even when Friday comes around, I tell myself, yeah, it's Friday, I can try to relax and stuff. I'm knocked out. I'm like, so I have to do better. I have to do better. But like you said, I think having a schedule in this quarantine, it's really really hard. But I think it's really important to establish a routine.
It is, and that's
A
definitely
routine.
failing. I admit I've been failing. Today I got up early for me. I got up at like 8:30. I used
Oh,
to like 10, maybe 11, but I got up at like 8:30 and started doing stuff immediately and I felt so accomplished by
right,
like clock. I've done 5 things I wanted to do already. That's great.
right.
Versus usually when I sleep late, I like ease into the day. I watch Cuomo's briefings every day and then
Yeah,
I breakfast after that, and then it's like 1 o'clock, and I'm like, I've literally done
exactly. It's like, where's the time going?
right.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think for myself prior to this, I would be up early. I would be up by like 5 o'clock in the morning because I had to get ready to commute because I had a long commute, like about an hour. So I used to get up 5 o'clock. Sometimes I'll be in the city by 7 o'clock. Ask me if I could do that now. What? Probably 6 or 7ish. I'm up because what I've started doing, I tried to start jogging in the morning. I feel like it has helped me a lot.
That's
So,
good.
yeah, I hate. Well, I shouldn't say hate. I really had a dislike for running since high school. I remember they used to make us run around that track. Oh, do a mile. I hated it. I was just like, oh, this is ridiculous. And somebody was telling me about the Nykki app, and you should be able to download the app, and it's really good. And I'm just like, okay, I will check it out. But what I really like about the Nykki app is that they have different programs.
Okay.
So they have what they call as guided runs. They have like a quick workout. They also have Also little things where you could work on different things. So I just used to just use the app, and I'm like, oh, this is not working for me. And then I said, you know what, one day I'm going to try the guided run. And the guided run is set up in a way where you're running, and then there's like a coach. They have different coaches, but this guy was Coach Brian. So Coach Brian was like talking to me, and well, he was just like, well, slow down, and okay, you're coming up to the next mile. Continue the pace, but move a little faster. And I didn't even notice I was running. I didn't even notice
Really?
anything. And I thought that it was like for this app to be free and all of these different materials. I'm like, there's no excuse for me to say, oh, I can't do something, because I am a person, I know that I've always struggled with running. And now like it's to the point that from what we're in June, right? It feels like I don't even know what month we're in. So from June, and I started like about May, let's say May 18th, I guess. So it's about a month. So between then until now, I already did 40 miles in the app.
Please. See, that's
So
interesting to say that, because I downloaded the Nike Running, and then I think there's also Nike Fit. I downloaded both of them. To be honest, I really only downloaded Nike Running so I could like track me. And then for Ahmad Marbury's birthday, I ran the 2.3 miles. So I was like, I gotta have it. So that's why I downloaded the app. But I haven't really explored anything else. But now hearing you, because I'm also not a runner like at all.
yeah, I can't run at all.
It makes me.
Yeah, I think you will really enjoy it. And then really look into the guided runs. They have all kind of different levels, like your first run, and they also have like really nice music also kind of in the app itself. So
Yeah.
like I'm a person that always like to run to maybe faster paced music, but I didn't even care what they had playing. I thought it was very good, and it kept you focused. So I really like that. And I think another great little kind of like feature that they have what they call speed running. And normally when I think about speed, I think about Usain Bolt. That's like speed. And so now with that, it's kind of like intervals. So you run really fast and then you stop, and then you run really fast again and then you stop. And then it kind of coaches you how to get faster each time. And I think about the fourth time I was doing it, I was just like, what? You could send me to the Olympics. So I'm telling you, I think you should really check it out. Check out that Nike app.
Tomorrow, like, okay, what did she
Yeah.
say? Guided runs, okay, like,
Yeah. And then when I'll add you as a friend, and then like within the challenges, I think in the challenges you could add like certain things. So I will add like the guided run to the challenge or something. And it's great. It's great. You would definitely enjoy it.
I will check into that.
Yes, you will love it.
Speaking of this, all of this, like routine things and quarantine and all that, how have you, well, I guess before I ask you that, I'm curious to know more of like your story, your background. I know now you're in New York. I'm back.
Yeah, I'm in New York now. It's crazy because I mean, I've been trying to move to New York for a long time. And when I say I was trying to move to New York for a long time, I
Yeah.
mean since high school. I knew I was like, okay, right after high school, I'm out of Florida and I'm going to be in New York. I wasn't even thinking about it. So I must say that, failure was definitely in the way. I failed a couple of times. There were times I went to different job interviews and it didn't work out. There were times that I was trying freelancing things and it didn't work out. So I think that with failure, you have to understand the purpose of it.
Yeah.
And one day I was actually driving home with a friend. Her name is Nicole. And I remember being stuck behind this train, and the train was like forever. And I just waited because I told myself, well, okay, maybe it's going to pass. A whole 15 minutes and the train was still there. And I'm like, what? This train is not passing. And then it hit me. You are the person stuck behind the train. You have to find another way to get to your other destination. And since that day until now, I've applied that to a lot of things in life. And I must say that it has really helped me. And I say that to say that you have to know what works for you. And just because you're trying to get to one area in your life or meet a goal and it's not working out that way, try something different, but still keep that same goal in mind and it will come true. So a little bit after that, I was applying for different jobs and different things. And everybody knows that I've always loved fashion and I really wanted to work in the fashion industry. But really and truly, when it comes down to my professional experience, healthcare and finance, I have many years in on that industry. So I applied to one of the hospitals here in New York. And fun fact, that was, I actually interviewed at that same hospital once, and it didn't go well for that particular position. And I was crying. I was like, oh man, you know, New York job market is tough compared to coming from the South. And um, I did not let that stop who I was and say, okay, just because this had happened doesn't mean that I'm going to give up on this organization.
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah, so I interviewed for the organization, and the crazy thing about it is, and I know a lot of people may be facing this same obstacle now, is when I interviewed for that organization, I had to go through HR and different people, and I interviewed with this guy. So the position I was going for was going to be working with scientists in the cancer biology genetics program. And the guy was completely racist. He was terrible. He was very mean. I remember sitting in an interview, like stunned for words. Like it was him and another girl, and they were both very mean, and they were taunting me, ha ha ha. And I remember sitting there telling myself, I come too far to let anybody or anything make me feel like that.
Right.
So fast forwarding a couple of weeks from that, I got the position, but I didn't get the position with that guy. The position that I got was actually higher than that man's position, working for the director. So long story short, I remember one day I had to, somebody called me and they said, hey, we need the keys for the conference room. And when I went to the conference room, it was that same man, and it was me that had to open the door. So that, I say that to say that sometimes in life you question things, we question why things are happening, but guess what? Buckle up and continue for the ride, because it's all for the purpose. So
Yeah.
that's how I got into New York. I relocated from that position, and I must say I'm very thankful for the position. I'm thankful to be in the healthcare settings, because even now with everything that's going on with COVID-19, to still be being able to help the community is really helped me. But I don't really work like in the actual hospital per se. I work in the cancer research sector. So a lot of the things that I do, I help scientists as far as get pats and grants, and helping with grant writing and so many different things. So that's how I came to New York. So once I came to New York, my game plan was, okay, yes, I love being in the healthcare industry, but really and truly fashion is my passion. What am I going to do? So I still continue with my blogging, still continue being able to write, still being able to continue to never give up. I remember there were days where I would go to Fashion Week, still have to go to work early in the morning, commute and get there on time. So I say that you need discipline. Once you know your goal and know what you're here for, you have to continue and keep doing your best. You just can't say just because something is not working out doesn't mean that, oh, I'm just going to fail, or I'm not going to give it 100. Everybody gives 100, but if you're able, give that 150, because that 50% will save you in the long run.
Absolutely. So question for you. I actually have a few as you were talking. One, did you say anything to HR about that guy who interviewed you?
So at the time when that position and everything had happened, I was afraid. I was really afraid to even say anything, because I didn't know who that man was. I didn't know who he was to the company, but I was also disappointed, because I said, well, how can a man in this position talk to people like that and be able to still work here? Does that reflect the views of the organization?
Yeah,
And afterwards, I remember we had a kind of like an employee review, and I felt that, you know, one thing, you're gonna have to speak your mind, no matter how hard it is, or if people don't. I don't want to say people are not gonna like it. You can say it respectfully, you know. And I remember I had a review with the director, who was actually my boss, and he is the overall director of cancer research in New York. Well, from Memorial Sloan Kettering. So he is like one of the top guys. So he asked me about the position, how I liked it. And I said, you know, I just wanted to talk to you about an experience that had happened to me at the interview. I know now it doesn't reflect the views of MSK, but at the time, I was very afraid to join the organization, because I thought that maybe this kind of practices maybe in a workplace. And he was shocked. He was shocked to know that was going on. Because even the director, he is immigrant himself. He's not a native of America. He's from Spain. So he was shocked to know that that things like this was even going on. And when they really look back into it and they notice a trend that majority of people that were minority were well interviewing for this guy never even made it to the final round.
Yep. It's so important that you brought their experience. Maybe about a year and a half ago, I had applied for a position. I saw it online, and I go to the application, and the application to me was very invasive for me not to even have had an interview. I mean, aside from like career history, it's talking about like, have you ever received government assistance? Do you receive government assistance for children? Like, it's literally getting really in depth. Have you ever been on like, I think like financially government assistance, like everything. It's getting so in depth, and like I was comfortable answering questions, but I'm like, if I was someone who was not comfortable answering these questions, I wouldn't even finish the application. And so the funny thing, I applied for this job literally like a year later. They call me because this position is still open. And so I go in for the interview, and I think I may have, I'm trying to think if I said something ahead of time. I don't remember if I said anything ahead of time, but when I was in there, because I had like a series of interviews with like the people I'd be working with and HR and someone else. So when I spoke to HR, I was like, I just want to let you guys know that your online application was very, very invasive. It felt like it was asking a lot of personal questions that it's too much if you haven't even looked at
met the person.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and so they were like, really? We didn't know that. And so I told them everything, how I felt. And I met actually with the head of HR that day. She's like, oh my goodness, thank you so much for letting me know. She's like, I'm going to go back and look at this application right now.
Wow.
So I think in your instance and mine, I think it's good that we spoke up, because a lot of people may not say anything. They might just be like, I don't need this, whatever. But that's not really going to help change if we don't speak up. So
exactly. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think one little tab that I'll add to that story. I remember when I was interviewing that day, there was a man. He was also interviewing. He was Black as well. And I remember he looked at me and I looked at him, and I guess it was that warn of, yeah, you're going to interview with this guy and it's crazy. But funny thing, after I had communicated about the initial issue, I see that he got hired. So like you see, they probably did some research and realized that, he's a candidate that is well qualified. So I remember that I was walking down the hallway one day and he saw me and I saw him, and we were just like literally smiling. I felt like it was a commercial. We were like smiling because I knew that they were able to investigate that issue. And it's sad because there are people out there with the qualifications and the skill sets, and they know, and they are well more than qualified, but sometimes it's just sad to say, it's just that one person that doesn't agree or don't like who you are, that are just very dismissive. But you can't worry about them, because when it's a bigger plan for you, nobody can stop it.
Absolutely. I always look at situations like that as like, to me, I'm like, this is the devil trying to block my blessing.
Exactly.
Let a person or a challenge or whatever, like, I got to keep going. Like, if this is really what I want to do, I got to push past it, because even in your instance, like, yes, this was a terrible interview, but you got the position and now it's been a blessing. But if you, like you said, if you were like, you know what, I don't need this, and walked away, it would have been totally different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that sometimes I feel like, actually, when I was running the other day, I was thinking, and then I realized that sometimes when you want something, it's not easy to be like, oh, I could just pick it up from Target. Sometimes I feel like the universe and, God, in different situations, they throw obstacles in your way just to see how bad you may want something, just to see how patient you are, just to see how disciplined you are. And I think that you have to pass the ultimate test. Don't give in to temptation. Don't give in to naysayers. Don't listen to what nobody says. Because, prior to me moving here, there were people from my own hometown. It wasn't everybody, but there were people from my hometown that were like, why would you want to move to New York? There's nothing in New York there for you. There's a bunch of snow. There's this, and this. And I feel that you can't necessarily listen, because everybody have their own opinions. But at the end of the day, you have to do what works best for you.
Yep. Yeah. I agree. So let's talk a little bit about that. So how did you first get into it? And then that leading to this story of you in New York. Like, when did you first my thing?
Oh, with Fashion Week? Sorry, it was a mute.
General, just fashion in general.
So, I would go rewind back to my Caribbean background. So my grandmother, she was a seamstress. She was always well known in this small area called Arima in Trinidad about making clothes and stuff. So as I was growing up, she would always just make stuff for me, and people would be like, "Oh man, that's so neat," but I didn't think anything of it at the time. And then it wasn't until like my grandmother, when she used to come visit here from the Caribbean, she would always want to go shopping because there's more clothes here. And she would always want to go shopping, and I just had no choice but to just pay attention. So I remember at a young age, I was just always looking at fabrics. I was always looking at different things and saying to myself, like, man, I feel like I know what's good quality and what's not. And I'm like, 10? That's ridiculous. I don't know if this is a thing. And moving on from there, I just always had a spark of interest in fashion. But when I was in my undergrad, I had the opportunity to go to London and Paris for a study abroad for a little bit. And from there, that changed my perspective. I'm like, oh, yes,
That's
this, this is a thing. You could be really, involved in fashion. And this is not more than a hobby, I guess you could say, because I feel that most growing up, depending on, I guess to say the culture, it's either a doctor, lawyer, whatever. Anything outside of that is it's alarming. So I had to, but I'm very grateful for my family and my parents because I feel that their ultimate goal was just happiness. As long as you're happy and you're okay, we're happy for you. So I was very thankful for them for that. But I think after that study abroad and really seeing that different perspective internationally, I said, okay, I'm not on Florida time now. As far as like trying to do what I want to do, I said, no, New York has always been like a goal of mine to get to as far as broadening that horizon for myself. And then after coming back from that study abroad, I started doing small things. I started blogging. I started volunteering at fashion shows. I started helping dressing models. And I say that to say that if you can't get to your goal city, volunteer in your community. Do what it takes. Don't let nobody take advantage of you now, but be able to do what it takes for you to build that experience. So I started building that experience, and then from there, I was able to start getting into going into Fashion Week. And then after really getting into Fashion Week, I felt like that was like, okay, yes, now I have a kind of an idea of what I personally would like to do in fashion. And I think that's more so on the editing side, writing and being able to highlight smaller brands and also individuals that are up and coming.
okay, dope. Yeah, I saw your post a few days ago. I told you I ordered that shirt from
Yes,
Rebels,
I'm
and
so happy. Did you get your shirt yet?
yes, it came yesterday. I was so excited.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, the shipping is quick, and I haven't personally met them yet, but I follow them on Instagram, and what I like about that particular brand is that, very professional, and I love how they are just well-rounded in what they do, and even down to the quality of the shirt, to the bag, the packaging, I thought it was amazing.
I was like, this is good cotton, and I love a good cotton shirt. It was
Yes. I was very satisfied. I remember telling a friend, I said, I'm very satisfied, and I'm actually going to buy another one. The one that I bought Stylish Rebels NYC. I wanted to do the My Black is Stylish, but what I'm doing for myself is I'm setting a budget of how much I'm going to spend for Black-owned business, and I said, okay, I'm going to exceed the budget. So I'm going to, next time around, go and definitely purchase My Black is Stylish. But I love the brand, and like you mentioned, I love a great cotton shirt, great quality. And I think that in the wake of everything that's going on right now, it's so important to really do your research and support brands that are supporting you.
yeah. Yep, you're right.
Yes. 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 And and I know I feel like I'm all blabbing about myself, but Nick, I would love to know about your experience as well and learn about you and you transitioning into New York. That's more exciting than my old talk.
Oh no, yours is exciting too. Yeah, so my New York, it's interesting. So I was born in Connecticut. I moved to Michigan when I was 9. My dad got a new job. I went to college in DC, back to Michigan, and then finally to New York. But when I was a kid in Connecticut, I was also a child model. So I would come to the city sometimes for like photo shoots and stuff like that. Or worked in the city, so my mom and I might come to like meet him for lunch or go to Rockettes at Christmas time. But it was always like a trip for a purpose and go back home. So I'm 9, we moved to Michigan, and I don't even remember the whole conversation, but I remember having a conversation with my mom, and somehow it came up that people actually live in New York.
Wow.
And you can live there? Like, people like live in the city? I was like, well, I want to live there. Like, I want to live there. And so from 9, I was like, I'm moving to New York. Like, that's it. I'm living there. And it wasn't even like a career thing yet. I just knew I wanted to live in the city. That was just what I wanted. And so, it progressed, and I go through high school, and I'm applying to colleges, and my mom is like, you're not going to New York right out of high school. And I think my dad was more chill about it, I think. But my mom was like, you're not going to New York right out of high school. And I was like, dang, okay. So that's when I go to DC. I went to Howard, which I think was one of my best decisions. I love Howard.
Great school. Great school.
I love Howard. Was an amazing experience. And honestly, I think it was at Howard that, so I already knew I was into photography. I got into photography my freshman year of high school. And prior to that, I would have, do you remember the cameras that were like the long flat ones?
Oh, yeah.
So I had a bunch of those, and I would take those on family vacations or whatever. But I remember my freshman year, it was second semester, I had an empty space in my schedule. My guidance counselor was like, oh, well, there's a photography class at that time. Do you want to take it? And I'm like, well, okay, like, I like taking pictures. Let's do it. And it was black and white photography, film, dark room. And I loved it. Like, first couple classes, I'm like, this is it. I love photography. I love it. This is what I want to do.
Wow.
That was like, it's been like 20 years now, which is crazy.
Wow.
So I started, and I have done photography ever since. And so, I'm coming to my senior year, and I want to go to New York. My mom's like, you're not going to New York. So I decided to go to Howard. My major was advertising. My minor was photography. And in addition to that, I worked for Howard Yearbook for about, I want to say 3.5 years. I worked for the year senior year. I was photo editor. I worked as a photographer. I was a historian of my sorority. Like, photography was always in there. Like, it was my mind. I was doing that in addition to my major. Yeah. And the major in photography, I remember I was like, I was blessed to get a scholarship. But I was like, you know what, if someone is paying for this education, you can be an artist and not have any classical training. There are plenty of people out there who are self-taught, very successful. So I'm going to school to pay for an education. Let me choose something that I don't really know about. So that's why I decided to do advertising. And I had met, my dad knew someone who I think was a creative director at an agency. So I met her when I was in like high school, and I was like, that's the creative side, advertising, I could do that. So that was what I did all the way through Howard. And then when it was my senior year at Howard, I remember I had 2 job offers. I had one to go to New York and work more on the account side. So that's more like the middle person between the agency and the client.
The account holder and whatnot.
And then my other offer was back in Michigan, but in the creative department as a copywriter. And I weighed them out. One job in Michigan paid more, and I could live at home and save.
Yes.
I was like, well, I can do that. And also, it's me being creative. And so I think that was one of those moments where, like, I think probably around that time, which was like 22-ish, is when I can look back and really pick up, like, God placing me places. Like, I get an option, but, like, one is clearly better than the other. So, like, I could work, which is what I wanted, but it wasn't the department, and it was making less, and money would have been really tight. Or it's the department I want, I'm making more, but you have to go to Michigan. So I was like, fine, I'm going to go to Michigan. I'm going to be there for 1 year. I'm out. Like, I'm living at home, so I don't have to break a lease. Like, it was my plan. Like, 1 year.
Yeah.
So I was, like, looking for jobs the whole time. And it wasn't a year. It was not a year. It was longer than that. And I would, like, travel. Some of my friends did go to New York right out of college. So I would, like, go and visit them. And I would come to this a lot. And I remember 3 years in, came for like a week. And I knew some people who worked at had agencies here, or I knew people who like had connections at agencies. So that week I stayed with one of my friends in Harlem, and like almost every day I'm doing just like informal interviews. And at this point, these were advertising jobs because that's what I had been doing full time. That was like the pay the bills job. Still love photography, but I wasn't at the point to be paid for that yet.
Right.
Living on it yet. And so I am going and I like stay for a week and I meet all these people. And so then I go home. So that was 2010, summer 2010. So then fast forward, it's 2011. And basically I've been in for 4 years since I graduated. And I'm like, yo, this wasn't the plan. Like, it was supposed to be 1 year and I'm out. 4 years later, I'm still here.
Right.
Having some really good conversations with friends, and someone pretty much, the way she put it was like, you know what, if you make this jump and you go to New York, she said the worst thing that could happen, if it doesn't work out, you go home and live with your parents.
Yeah.
I was like, and you know what, I'm already home living with my parents. Now everyone doesn't have that option, but for me, I could just go home and live with my parents. I was already home living with my parents, so essentially if it doesn't work out, I can come back and do the same thing.
Right.
But you're right. And so that was like January of that year. And I started putting a plan together for myself. And it was like, I stopped traveling. And mind you, I traveled a lot because I wasn't trying to be in Michigan. So I was like, hang out with my friends in DC. Now I'm going to New York. Now I'm going to Chicago.
Yeah.
So I stopped traveling. So I wasn't spending that money. Any extra photo jobs or extra, it was mostly photo jobs I was doing on the outside. All of that money went into my savings. Right. And I'm paying down any credit card bills I have. Like, I wanted to move to New York with like no debt.
Yes.
Or as little debt as possible. And so, and I didn't tell my parents this plan. Like, they always knew New York thing, but they didn't know I was actively working towards this. And then I remember it was one Sunday in May. And I had like loosely dates that I thought I was going to move around. You know, didn't really set anything, but it was a Sunday in May. I remember I had gone to church by myself. I came back home, was having brunch with my parents. And they asked me what the sermon was about. And essentially the sermon was about, you know, taking a leap of faith, even if you don't know what the next step is.
Yes. That, man.
That like, yeah, so you should just like take a step, even if you don't know where you're going. I was like, yes. As a matter of fact, there's something I want to talk to you guys about. And so I pretty much told them at that point, like, hey, I'm moving to New York. You guys know I've been wanting to do this. I've been saving up. Blah, blah, blah. I had the whole plan, told them the whole plan. And my parents were like, well, how much do you have saved? I'm like, I have 6 months saved. I already talked to my friend. She said I can stay on her couch. We worked out how much I would pay her. You know, I have other friends who said if I need to stay, I can do that. I have contacts at agencies, like whatever. And so my dad was like, you know, that's great, but I think, you know, you should wait and save up a year before you go. I think you should wait, just save up more. And my mom, now mind you, my mom, love her. She is very like a more play it safe person.
Yeah.
Like, I expected her to be like, agree with my dad. So my mom goes, I think she should go now. And I was like, literally jaw dropped. I was like, what? Wow. And she's like, yeah, she won't be at this position in her life anymore all the time. You know, there's no major responsibility. She has her care of her dog, you know, and I think she should go now. And I was like, what? Wow. So it goes in motion. I ended up moving in August, and it was cool. So
I moved in August too. Do you remember the date?
I moved August 18th.
I moved August 11th.
Okay.
Well, hopefully this Corona thing is over. We'll definitely have to celebrate that.
We have to. This will be 9 years for me, which is crazy.
What? Oh my God. I'm about to be making a year and in August. That 9 years. And I think you know what is amazing about you know what is amazing about your story, Nykki, is that I think we could both definitely relate on the fact of taking that leap of faith. And one thing I realized about being in New York and wanting to be able to consider this place a home and really want more for yourself, you have to, I know it's easier said than done, but you can't worry about the small stuff. I mean, I know me personally, and I'm pretty sure you're the same way. My faith is very large in God, and I just know that sometimes I just can't be in control. I have to let go and let him do the work. And it's similar to you. It's funny you said, you know, you went to a sermon, because I remember the day before I moved, because I moved to New York on a Sunday. And that Saturday before, I used to volunteer in this church in Orlando by doing Zumba classes to the youth ministry. And I remember one of the like the youth pastors, he was like our age, he was talking about surrender, how you just have to surrender it all, and you have to surrender yourself and put yourself in the position, because if not, you're going to be placed in the position to surrender. And I felt that it's like, wow, as I listened to that before I left, it has really helped my train of thinking since I came up here, that, you know, I can't worry about the money. I can't worry about this. I can't worry about that, because you know what? I know God has not failed me yet.
Said, I agree with you 100%. And I think
Yeah.
if you asked me my biggest lesson in New York, it's been a lesson in exercise. And I had faith before, but taking the leap of faith. And for the most part, I've been here almost 9 years. I would say 6.5 of those 9 years, I've been working freelance. So that's contract work for a certain project, a certain amount of time. Then it's up, you got to find new work. And I remember the first time it happened, I was shocked. But I've had multiple jobs come in and they'll be like, so today's your last day. I know we told you it was going to be next Tuesday, but actually it's today. And
Wow.
where it's like, what? And you know, it's scary. The first few times it was so scary because I'm like, I didn't see this coming. I couldn't plan for this. But going through those situations and seeing that God has got my back, because every
Yeah.
time something else came.
Yeah.
Right when I needed it. And that's been so much of my story. Even, you know, at one point I got laid off from a job, first time I had been laid off. But it took that for me to really start thinking like, you know what, I think I want to go back to grad school for something I'm passionate about, because
Right.
I wasn't really feeling the company, but I remember looking at everyone who worked there loved the company, and they would come in on the weekends and they would come early and work late, and they were like, eat, sleep, and breathe it. And I'm over here like, yo, when can I go home? And so, you know, what I took away from that situation is like, I need a job where I feel like them. And
Yeah.
that is photography. And, you know, it's a whole different testimony for how I went back to grad school and the time. God made it very clear. The abbreviated version is that I had gone to an info session, decided like for my program, like, it's not really for me. I'm still on the mailing list. I see like applications coming. Oh, deadline closed. So 1 year, application comes, deadline closes. I go to this program, and there are some fine artists who have master's degrees on this panel. And so I just pretty much asked them, you know, as an artist, do you think it was beneficial to get a master? Because again, you don't have to be classically trained. And
Right.
you know what? Getting my master's gave me direction in my work. And it sort of clicked like, you know what? I think that's what I feel like I'm missing. I know I love photography. I know I love fashion. But I think what's missing is my read it. And so that night I decided, you know what? I'm going to look back at more fashion photography programs specifically. I don't want to do any photography. I want to do fashion photography. Mind you, the program I had looked at, deadline has passed. When I tell that less than a week, I get an email, not to my promotions folder like usual, but to my main inbox in all caps, talking about rolling admissions. I was like, oh, hey, God, you want me to apply now?
Wow.
And so, you know, I have so many instances like that where it's just an exercise in faith. And like you said, like letting go and letting God, trusting He will come in and guide you. But also, you know, I pray for discernment often, just like,
Yes.
let me be aware when you are directed to whatever it is.
Oh my God, boy, I can stand up and do a Harlem Shake right now, because this is so true. I think this is so true. And I feel like this is even confirmation for me, because I remember I was speaking with my aunt today, and we were talking about, you know, seeking graduate level education. And that's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And I remember prior to last year, I was considering going back to school, and then like I was trying to look for a different position. So I felt like that was always on the back burner. But I feel like now I'm in a, like you said, I'm in a better position to get direction in what I want to do. So I want to look into that. So just hearing that, I'm just like, again, you know, I feel like you said we have to be aware of the signs. We have to be aware of the messages that's being brought to us. And I think it's very important that I also wanted to make sure that I said this in the live, is that when you connect with people, you're making sure you're connecting with people that has the same goals and values as you. And
Yeah.
I can honestly say that about you since the day I met you from day one, even prior to me living here. I mean, I can speak to you like on months on end, but it could be like, hey, how are you? You good? I'm good. I know you're good. And I think that, those connections has really inspired me to say, you know what? I I have what I need as far as being able to be physically healthy, being able to have a support system. What can I do to keep moving forward now?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
And sidebar, hi to everyone who's joined. My screen froze, so I can't see who's joining, but thanks for
Okay, yeah, let me see. I pretty sure this thing here went dark for a second. I'm like, come on. T-Mobile has been having giving problems, and I'm like, this is the wrong time
it's
to be
okay.
giving problems. But yeah, so I must say it's a great testimony. And I think another lesson that I've learned about being in New York is that even though this is a fast city and a lot of things is happening, have patience with certain things. Have patience and do what works for you, because I mean, even in a position, when I got into the position, I remember there were so many people. They were like, oh, this person used to work in that position, and this person used to work in that position, and oh, I don't know if you would like it. And I remember actually about a couple of weeks ago, I had got an email, and it was like, hey, they wanted to find out more about my job description. And I was scared because I was like, oh God, are they saying stuff online? But it was when I was doing stuff more in the office, and I said, yeah, sure, and I sent that to them, and they emailed me back, and we were just like, well, from your work, we want to promote you to underneath executive level now. And I was just like, what? That never in my mind. I mean, I didn't want to say I'm incapable of it, but it just goes to show you that, sometimes just because it didn't work for somebody else doesn't mean it's not going to work for you. And
Absolutely.
you just come, you give your 100%, have a great attitude. Even there were days when I was so tired from like doing blogging and stuff like that. I come into the office, I still make sure I come early, I still come and smile and give my best. And I encourage you guys to find that passion so you could give your best and what you do, because I'm telling you, you'd be surprised who is paying attention to your work ethics.
Absolutely. That's so true on so many levels. And I think going back to what you were saying about, wanting to work with people who have similar energy and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I think in addition to that, it's not being afraid to kind of reach out to people, because for people who don't know, like we met legit after a fashion show during Fashion Week. There was
Yeah.
no like, oh, I know her, y'all should meet. Like literally, it was the
Pier 59.
yeah,
Yeah, it was at Pier 59, and they had some with cocktail hour. I
yeah.
still have the picture. I'm gonna repost the picture later on tonight. I think that was like around 2008.
No, it wasn't that long ago. It was what are we in?
No, 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 2018. I mean, what in the world?
Yeah,
2000, I'm
it was
sorry, people.
right. It was a cocktail hour. There's a DJ, and
Yeah.
a lot of times when I do Fashion Week stuff as a photographer, I can't bring anyone or I don't. So literally, I'm just there with the camera, like do. It's a happy hour. There's this dope model DJ. I'm gonna stay here, and I like took some pictures of her. And I just remember you walked up to me and you just like started speaking. And I think that's one of the things that is really awesome about you is like it's like I don't know how you feel inside, but it seems like you're kind of like cool. I'll just talk to them. They look cool.
Yeah, and that's one thing about me, because I feel like I've never been a person. I don't like for people. I don't know. This might be weird, but I just don't like when like okay, some places I go places alone as well. So like I just hate when it's just like you're alone in a place and it's like man, you just feel so like not insecure, but you're just so afraid. And I never want nobody to feel like oh God, I'm in a place and these people are mean. I'm gonna be that laughing person, like, yo, what's up? You want something? I'm cool. You probably wouldn't even know me from a hole in the wall, but I think, like I said, I remember I saw you, and I'm just like, well, you're a photographer, and I think appearance is another thing. If you're smiling and if you're happy, I think that's another thing. It attracts that energy versus if you're sitting there looking like the Grinch all the time. That's never my motto. But I remember when I met you that day, and from that day until now, from now, and it's like just also see your line of work from then until now and that progress. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. And I feel the same about you. Like just
Oh, thank
I'm
you.
proud that you were able to make the New York work for you.
Yes.
that's a huge step. You know, it's a lot to do. And now just seeing what you've been doing, the type of content you've been creating and posting lately, definitely tapping back into your heritage. So to me, it's like a unique niche for you as a blogger and an influencer. Like, you know, it's your personal story. It's not just like, hey, I'm another girl in New York and I'm a blogger. Like, you have your personal story. And even when you're talking about your personality, I think all of that stuff is really important to consider when you're your own brand. And like you
Exactly.
mentioned, and I think for me as a photographer, generally you look at photographers who are like in the pit or wherever, they're going to be frumpy. They got their cargo pants and their like sneakers and whatever. Like, that's never been me as a person. And that's also not me as a photographer. So part of my brand is to show up and show out. Like, if I wasn't holding this camera, you would think I was a guest at this event. Like, that's sort of how I've always thought
Exactly.
of my brand. I can't assume everyone else would do it, but as I've developed my brand, those are things that I try and keep in place, and to being open and pleasant and all of those things. And so, and I think, you know, you too, like I said, you are really carving out a very unique place for your brand too. So I think it's just
Thank you.
just building brands. I mean, how has it been building your brand, and even have you had to shift in the midst of like COVID and everything else? How has that been for you?
I think, you know, to be honest with you, and I'm going to be so honest. I see my friend Junior here. Hey, Junior, he's from Jamaica. Right. It's my love you, Junior. I'll call you later, I promise. But I think in all reality, when I was in Florida, I know that a lot of people were blogging and they were doing different things. I've always wanted to blog, but I was afraid. I was afraid because I was just like, I know how I am. And when I say when I know how I am, I know what I like. So people may not be into things that I like. And I said, well, you know, what's holding me back from that? And I remember I stayed away from blogging from fashion for a long time because I felt like I wasn't good enough for it. And I was doing like farmers market blogging, going around Orlando and doing different things. And like I said, it wasn't until when I came back from that study abroad. And I'm just like, I remember people were thinking I was locals and they thought I was local, asking me, where's this place? I'm like, I don't know. But I think with everything in COVID has really, it was like a slingshot, and it just really excelled me forward because I already knew that I wanted consistency. I knew that I wanted to be able to share my story a little bit more. I feel like I've always been more timid in a way, as far as like, oh, I feel so weird talking about myself because I don't want to be so like centered, because it's never about me. I always say it's always about you, as far as being able to provide resources for my followers or just helping them out. But I think now this COVID thing, I was just speaking to my brand sponsors, Box, and I feel like there's a purpose in everything. There's a purpose. Jenny said, tough up the thing. Exactly. But I feel like there's a purpose in everything. And, you know, even in this whole midst of COVID and the health of others and so many different things, I felt like it had showed me that, Danielle, I mean, my everyday schedule is always busy. I'm always doing a lot of things. But I felt like it showed me that, okay, now that you're centered and you're grounded, how are you going to be able to make a way for yourself with this? And again, gravitating towards my Caribbean heritage, I mean, I've migrated here from Trinidad and Tobago. And I remember before I moved, my dad, he told me, he said, Danielle, I left a country, all my family, I'm the only one from my initial family that left this country to come to a new country. If I can leave a whole country, I can't see why you can't leave to go to a new state.
Wow.
And I feel like that has always, like that, from that conversation, that always propelled me like, wow, you know, if he could do it, I could definitely do it. And I feel like that's why I'm always so deeply rooted to my Caribbean heritage, because it's not just me. There's a lot of people in my community that I love, that I want to be able to give back to. There's a lot of people like Junior and his family in Jamaica that I love, and I always want to be able to help and give back to, because I think that living in the Caribbean is a different dynamic. And I know America has its problems and its fair share of problems. But what I do love about being here is that you could be a pauper, but you could be a millionaire if you really want to. And sometimes when there's a lot of economic, like, like economic systems in the Caribbean, it's very hard to excel if you're not in a rich family, or certain things is just very hard. And it's very hard for people to be able to have those resources and stuff. And knowing, you know, ultimately, when I grew up in the Caribbean, my family, they were more on the wealthier side, but still that never shifted me from not knowing what is around me, who's around me, how I can help others. And that has always like prompted my blog to highlight the Caribbean culture, because people, they see Rihanna, they see, you know, Bob Marley, they see so many of these different, let's say, legends coming from the Caribbean, but they don't know their lifestyle. They don't know how hard people have to work. They don't know how many people sacrifice just so they could be able to be here. Especially my dad. My dad left everything he knew for me to be here. So that's why I always make sure I can never forget where I'm coming from. And it's always been a big part of my personality, because it's always going to be a part of me, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yes, so I think that with this whole COVID thing, and like you mentioned, my Caribbean heritage, it has given me the courage to really say, okay, this is the content that I want to create, and how am I going to get creative, and how am I going to do different things. And I think even being in New York is like, okay, I'm here now. There's no excuse for you to be, oh, why am I not doing it? Because when I realized with this whole thing with COVID is that you better do it right now while right now is happening, because you don't know if you're going to get a second opportunity again.
Mm-hmm. That's so.
And we've all learned that, you know, this year, as far as things had to get canceled, so many different things had happened where we were unable to really do what we wanted to do, quote unquote. So I think that's what has helped me with my brand. And then now I'm helping out with Volatile Online, and I'm helping them as a managing editor. Jared, that's his magazine.
Oh, that's awesome. I
Yeah,
didn't.
so that's, yeah, Jared from Fashion Week. Yeah, that's his magazine. So him and we communicated, and I was actually just doing contributing writing for a while, and he was just like, would you like to just come on board? And I said, okay, but in small strides, because I feel like it's also important too that we have to support our community, and we have to make sure that if we're talented in things that we do, we have to share ideas and be able to be that network and help others. Because I always say there's always competition, and me personally, I don't believe in competition, because what's for you will always be for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that doesn't mean that you can't help people along the way. It doesn't mean that you can't hold back information. No, not at all, because you never know where your opportunity comes from. You don't
Yep.
know what will happen to you in life. So you just continue being the, you know, blessings to others. And even if it doesn't come back from ultimate others, you never know where it comes from. So you have to be able to be open, give, and as we would say in the Caribbean, give that one love. So that's a testimony in itself, I guess you could say.
That's a crazy testimony. That was amazing.
Thank you, thank you. It's heartfelt, because that's something that I'm really passionate about. But I think that you know, outside of my Caribbean heritage, don't get me wrong, growing up in Florida too, you know, has motivated me as far as like working in different places and being able to um, like still be friends with people and people from school for all these years, and them just kind of like taking a page from their book, and they're telling me like, oh, you know, when I was your age, I wanted to do this. I don't want that vocabulary. I don't want to wish. I want to be able to do it.
That you did it. Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I think I've had similar and different experiences with COVID in terms of my content, because
Yes.
so much of my content is going out and photographing people,
Yeah.
fashion influencers, or I'm at events, or even any kind of photo shoot. You know, we're going out and photographing people. And so for me, it's been a period of working on my brand on the back end, like the business part, which I don't give a lot of time to, or I haven't in the past. But I think it's also been a period of exploration, just like self exploration. You know,
Right.
myself doing a lot of nature photography as I was going on walks. Okay, cool. Let me dabble in that. Oh, okay. If I can't photograph people, what else can I do? Accessories. Okay, let's try some accessories. You know, so I've
Yes.
done a lot of exploration. I've done some self portraits. I've done kind of playing around more with manipulation and photo. I don't really like to do a ton of manipulation graphically. I like my photos to be life and vibrant and optimistic. I don't
Yes.
want something creative on the computer, but having time, I've played with that. You know, I think so. Since I've appreciated it because to your point, I don't know that I'm going to have all this time again by
Yes.
myself to put whatever I want to explore. So there, and I have different products I've kind of been exploring with my,
Yeah.
I'm like, I got the time. Let me just try it. Let me try and design that. It doesn't work. Okay, cool. Let me try and photograph that. I don't really like it. That's fine. Because
Yeah.
it kind of reminds me like when I was in grad school, because grad school was a period like I was constantly creating work, but in the midst of creating it, I was able to grab towards what I liked or didn't like.
Right.
So in this period, doing a lot of that, and then COVID, and then on top of that, everything with George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement, and
Yes.
I think for me, I've definitely appreciated what you've been doing and the content you've been putting out and promoting designers of color and just Black businesses. And for me, I'm like, knowing my position as a photographer, that I create authentic imagery that's vibrant and uplifting and celebratory. Like how, and with diversity in my work, I've really had to ask myself, like, how can I that important factor on? The last,
Right.
and it's not that I absolutely think people about what's going on and speaking out. Absolutely. But I know when I had the few photos that were not that and that were something like unrelated, I was kind of like, oh man, that just like helped my spirit to be uplifted for a minute because there's so
Yeah.
much on. And so that led me to create the Celebrate Black campaign.
Which I love. And I think, like you mentioned, it's, in the light of everything, it is very unfortunate that the chain of events that happened to George Floyd, because I mean, one thing that really, made me sad was just like, man, I have brothers, I have fathers, I have friends, and even if it wasn't a friend, he's somebody that looks like me. And it was very, it was very upsetting. And I think that in this time, everybody, the emotions that you're feeling, it's okay. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. It's okay to take that time and really collect yourself. And I think that social media is such a fast pace where everything is just being pushed out. It's okay to grieve, it's okay to understand the dynamic of the culture, everything around you. You have to really, take a step back and say, wow, it's okay to heal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely that. And I think, and also I had to tell myself, like, one, it's okay to feel, and I've been, myself to be more active. Okay, I'm not out with the protesters, but like, I'm sending these emails, I'm sharing these petitions, like,
Exactly.
stuff. And so I kind of wanted my photography to be an extension of that. And so that's like, that campaign is like celebrating Black culture. So often this narrative is negative or degrading or whatever around Black people. It's not true and it's not encompassing. And so that's where I flipped it. I was like, okay, well, let's focus on positive. There are so many amazing positive things about Black people and Black culture here in America.
Yeah.
Let's do that. And so that's sort of where I came from. Like, okay, we got to let's for me that is my speaking out. That's my way to like add something to this conversation.
Exactly. And I think, like you mentioned, it's amazing. And I think if there's one thing people, oh, they got a minute left. Maybe we could go back on live real quick because to finish this conversation, because I think this is great. I think that, like you mentioned, just because you may not be in the protests and different things, because I know me personally, there were times where I had to go back and forth from the hospital. And then, the hospital is a place where it's, a big concentration for COVID. And I still don't feel comfortable going around people too much because of initial exposure. Who knows? But just because people are doing things on social media doesn't mean that you're not helping also. So
Yeah.
whatever outlet that you decide to do to be positive, like you mentioned, you use your photography and image to highlight joy and happiness in the time right now, so we can remember that, hey, even though we face sad times, we face good times as well.
Yep.
So whatever you may be doing, using your platform, posting a picture. I remember there was a young lady that even messaged me, and she was just like, I want to have a conversation with my family about this. Where do I start? So be that voice, help people. There's people that ultimately don't know how to initially start this conversation. Be a vessel, I would say. Be open. Don't be so quick to, cut. No, you look at the situation, and then you tell yourself, okay, if somebody's wanting to talk to me, how can I talk to them back so we're all in this together to bring this movement forward and move forward and put it in a dynamic where we're all on the same page as far as being supportive. Yeah.
Absolutely. And being authentic to yourself, you know, because
Yeah.
I didn't want to just like throw up some pictures and say this stuff if that's not how I actually feel. So I had,
Exactly.
what is an authentic way for me to take action?